On that historic visit by the Israeli Prime Minister. We're joined now by Behnam Taleblu. He's a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Good evening to you, and thank you for being with us. So do you think Bennett had much success in getting the UAE to toughen its stance against Iran, or is it staying neutral on the issue?
Well, it's a pleasure to be back with you again. I really think it's a matter of phasing and tactics versus strategy. It's important that close partners, or even, dare I say, allies, the UAE and Israel, are having these conversations together, given the Abraham Accords, given the fact that Israel is now in CENTCOM, and given the oversized threat that the Islamic Republic of Iran's regional programs and nuclear program poses to both countries. So the fact that they're talking is by some low bar for victory, a victory. But how to translate that in something long-term, I think, is going to be a challenge for the UAE and Iran, given the tendency of some of the states in the GCC to want to support pressure against the Islamic Republic, but at the same time, of course, once Iran starts counterpunching or punching back, particularly as we saw in mid-2019 to present, some of these states have hedged, and I think the UAE's foreign and security policy towards Iran has been indicative of this hedging. There is still sanctions busting going on, as you know, and just recently it was reported that the Treasury Department is sending a delegation to the UAE to talk about sanctions enforcement, sanctions which I'm sure the Israelis would certainly be supportive of, because that's what's ultimately going to drive and sustain Iran at the nuclear negotiating table to give up more.
Now, there's a lot of talk about cooperation and moving forward and understanding between the two countries, but there is a certain level of mistrust as well, isn't there? Israel is reluctant to sell the Iron Dome technology, for example, because of the UAE's ties to Iran. Does Israel need to worry about that?
Well, I think right now both countries are sensing each other out. How much of this technical partnership is, again, going to become into a long-term strategic alliance? I think the economic roots are certainly there, as the previous correspondent mentioned. You know, there's a significant cultural component to the Abraham Accords as well. The question is, how can this be sustained in the military space? And the Iron Dome is going to be a great example, and that will really be a barometer of how successful this relationship is going to be moving into the next, 5, 10, 15 years, because the Islamic Republic of Iran not only has the region's biggest ballistic missile program, but significant cruise missile capabilities that were showcased in 2019, as well as an evolving drone program. And those are things that Iron Dome could effectively combat.
And there has been a lot of trade and a lot of cooperation, a lot of business deals. Where do you see the relationship going from here?
You know, it's very hard to be an optimist in the Middle East, but I am an optimist when it comes to this relationship. I think they have the security component. The 800-pound gorilla in the room is the, Islamic Republic of Iran's nuclear program and regional threats, plus, of course, a very good base to move forward from. I think Washington can, in fact, be a major force, an outside force, helping glue these two partners together through joint training and joint exercises, either that America has already with the Israelis or that America has already with the UAE or some other GCC states. So I think there really is potential to move it to this direction. It's just about a matter of some of the actors changing their behavior. And I think the trip by some high-level UAE officials to Iran may have been a political setback, but I don't think it's something that the Israel-UAE partnership, or again, dare I say, alliance, can't overcome.
Do you think we might see the Emirati Crown Prince in Israel one day?
I would certainly hope so. It would make sense.
Behnam Taleblu, thank you very much indeed. Well, we're taking